in the 8th chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. That is distinct. It's a distinct section in this chapter. It also introduces some new concepts. So I would like to congratulate all those who have decided to attend this wonderful Christmas Day evening program at India Heritage Foundation, Boston. And I hope that you're able to derive unlimited benefit from the association of the Lord's message in Bhagavad Gita. But first we'll start with prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskritya.
Narayanam Namaskritya.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Tato Jayamudirayet.
Tato Jayamudirayet.
Ashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu.
Ashtaprayesu Abhadreshu.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke.
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke.
Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki.
Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki.
Reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, Attaining the Supreme, verse 14. Ananyaha
Ananyaha
Chetaha
Chetaha
Ananya Chetaha
Ananya Chetaha
Satatam
Satatam
Ananya Cheta Satatam
Ananya Cheta Satatam
Yaha
Yaha
Mam Smarati
Smarati
Nityashaha
Nityashaha
Yo Mam Smarati Nityashaha
Yo Mam Smarati Nityashaha
Tasya
Tasya
Aham Sulabhaha
Sulabhaha
Partha
Partha
Tasyaham Sulabha Partha
Tasyaham Sulabha Partha
Nitya
Nitya
Yuktasya
Yuktasya
Yoginaha
Yoginaha
Nitya Yuktasya Yoginaha
Nitya Yuktasya Yoginaha
Ananya Cheta Satatam
Ananya Cheta Satatam
Yo Mam Smarati Nityasaha
Yo Mam Smarati Nityashaha
Tasyaham Sulabha Partha
Tasyaham Sulabha Partha
Nitya Yuktasya Yoginaha
Nitya Yuktasya Yoginaha
Ananya Cheta Satatam
Ananya Cheta Satatam
Yo Mam Smarati Nityashaha
Yo Mam Smarati Nityashaha
Tasyaham Sulabha Partha
Tasyaham Sulabha Partha
Nitya Yuktasya Yoginaha
Nitya Yuktasya Yoginaha
Ananya Cheta Satatam
Ananya Cheta Satatam
Yo Mam Smarati Nityashaha
Yo Mam Smarati Nityashaha
Tasyaham Sulabha Partha
Tasyaham Sulabha Partha
Nitya Yuktasya Yoginaha
Nitya Yuktasya Yoginaha
Ananya Cheta Satatam
Ananya Cheta Satatam
Yo Mam Smarati Nityasaha
Yo Mam Smarati Nityashaha
Tasyaham Sulabha Partha
Tasyaham Sulabha Partha
Nitya Yuktasya Yoginaha
Nitya Yuktasya Yoginaha Ananya Cheta Satatam
Ananya Cheta Satatam
Yo Mam Smarati Nityashaha
Yo Mam Smarati Nityashaha
Tasyaham Sulabha Partha
Tasyaham Sulabha Partha
Nitya Yuktasya Yoginaha
Nitya Yuktasya Yoginaha
Ananya Chetaha Satatam
Ananya Cheta
Satatam
Yo Mam Smarati Nityasaha
Yo Mam Smarati Nityashaha
Tasyaham Sulabha Partha
Tasyaham Sulabha Partha
Nitya Yuktasya Yoginaha
Nitya Yuktasya Yoginaha Ananya Cheta Satatam Yo Mam Smarati Nityashaha Tasyaham Sulabha Partha
Nitya Yuktasya Yoginaha
Nitya Yuktasya Yoginaha
अनन्यचेता सततम्
अनन्यचेता सततं
यो मां स्मरति नित्यसः
यो मां स्मरति नित्यशः
तस्याहं सुलभः पार्थ
तस्याहं सुलभः पार्थ
नित्ययुक्तस्य योगिनः
नित्ययुक्तस्य योगिनः
Anyone online?
अनन्यचेता सततं यो मां स्मरति नित्यशः तस्याहं सुलभः पार्थ नित्ययुक्तस्य योगिनः अनन्यचेता सततं यो मां स्मरति नित्यशः तस्याहं सुलभः पार्थ नित्ययुक्तस्य योगिनः अनन्यचेता सततं यो मां स्मरति नित्यशः तस्याहं सुलभः पार्थ नित्ययुक्तस्य योगिनः
Synonyms. Ananyachetaha,
अनन्यचेताः
without deviation.
without deviation
Satatam,
सततं
always.
always
Yaha,
यः
anyone.
anyone
Mam,
मां
me.
me
Krishna.
Krishna
Smarati,
स्मरति
remembers.
remembers
Nityashaha,
नित्यशः
regularly.
regularly
Tasya,
तस्या
to him.
to him
Aham,
aham
I am.
I am
Sulabhaha,
Sulabhaha
very easy to achieve.
very easy to achieve
Partha, O
Partha
son of Pritha.
O son of Pritha
Nitya,
Nitya
regularly.
regularly
Yuktasya,
Yuktasya
engaged.
engaged
Yoginaha,
Yoginaha
of the devotee.
of the devotee.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace. A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Translation. For one who remembers me without deviation, I am easy to obtain, O son of Pritha, because of his constant engagement in devotional service. Translation with repetition. For one who remembers me
For one who remembers me
without deviation,
without deviation,
I am easy to obtain,
I am easy to obtain.
O son of Pritha,
O son of Pritha,
because
because
of his constant engagement
of his constant
in
engagement
devotional service.
in devotional service.
Purport. Purport is a bit long, so please stay with me. In this verse, the Bhakti Yoga of the unalloyed devotees of the Supreme Godhead is described. The preceding verses mention 4 different kinds of devotees: the distressed, the inquisitive, those who seek material gain, and the speculative philosophers. Different processes of liberation from material entanglement have also been described: Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Hatha Yoga. But here, Bhakti Yoga, without any mixture of these, is mentioned. In Bhakti Yoga, the devotees desire nothing but Krishna. The pure Bhakti devotee does not desire promotion to heavenly planets, nor does he seek salvation or liberation from material entanglement. A pure devotee does not desire anything. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the pure devotee is called Nishkama, which means he has no desire for self-interest. Perfect peace belongs to him alone, not to them who strive for personal gain. The pure devotee only wants to please the Supreme Lord, and so the Lord says that for anyone who is unflinchingly devoted to him, he is easy to attain. The devotee can render service to any of the transcendental forms of the Supreme Lord, and he meets with none of the problems that plague the practitioners of other yogas. Bhakti Yoga is very simple and pure and easy to perform. One can begin by simply chanting Hare Krishna. Krishna is very merciful to those who engage in his service, and he helps in various ways that devotee who is fully surrendered to him, so he can understand him as he is. The Lord gives such a devotee sufficient intelligence so that ultimately the devotee can attain him in his spiritual kingdom. The special qualification of the pure devotee is that he is always thinking of Krishna without considering the time or place. There should be no impediments. He should be able to carry out his service anywhere and at any time. Some say that the devotee should remain in holy places like Vrindavan or some holy town where the Lord lived, but a pure devotee can live anywhere and create the atmosphere of Vrindavan by his devotional service. It was Sri Advaita who told Lord Chaitanya, "Wherever you are, O Lord, there is Vrindavana." A pure devotee constantly remembers Krishna and meditates upon him. These are qualifications of the pure devotee for whom the Lord is most easily attainable. Bhakti Yoga is a system that the Gita recommends above all others. Generally, the Bhakti Yogis are engaged in 5 different ways. 1. Shanta Bhakta, engaged in devotional service in neutrality. 2. Dasya Bhakta, engaged in devotional service as servant. 3. Sakya Bhakta, engaged as a friend. 4. Vatsalya Bhakta, engaged as a parent. And 5. Madhurya Bhakta, engaged as a conjugal lover of the Supreme Lord. In any of these ways, the pure devotee is always constantly engaged in the transcendental service of the Supreme Lord and cannot forget the Supreme Lord. And so, for him, the Lord is easily attained. A pure devotee cannot forget the Supreme Lord for a moment, and similarly, the Supreme Lord cannot forget his pure devotee for a moment. This is the great blessing of the Krishna conscious process of chanting the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna. Thus ends a wonderful transcendental purport. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namavom Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So let us take a closer look at this verse. Ananya cheta satatam yomam smarati nityashaha tasyaham sulabha partha nitya yuktasya yoginaha. It is a very prominent verse in the Bhagavad Gita. As we have been seeing in the 8th chapter and 7th chapter as well, there are several prominent verses that are quoted frequently by Srila Prabhupada in his various works. This is one of them. And the Lord is speaking about the glories, the glorious devotional service, pure devotional service. Ananya chetaha satatam. Here, ananya chetaha means without deviation. Anya means other. Cheta. Cheta means one's focus or attention. So, when the focus or attention is on other things, that is anya cheta. But when the focus is without deviation, that is ananya cheta. And that is not for just a moment, but always, satatam. When somebody is like that, yaha mam smarati nityasaha. So what should we do without deviation? One should be remembering Krishna always. So any person, regardless of what their background is, what is their religion or nationality, ethnicity, if that person can remember Krishna always, satatam, without deviation, ananya cheta, then that person becomes qualified for one greatly discounted process. And what is that discount? Krishna himself. Krishna himself becomes available to such a person. Tasyaham sulabha partha. He becomes very easy to achieve. Sulabha, very easy to achieve. Tasya aham. To him, I become very easy to achieve. Nitya yuktasya yoginaha. So a devotee who is regularly engaged in having one-pointed attention, remembrance of the Supreme Lord, always, constantly, satatam, To such a person, Krishna becomes very easy to attain. So the translation is, for one who remembers me without deviation, I am easy to obtain, O son of Pritha, because of his constant engagement in devotional service. So this is a beauty of Srila Prabhupada's translation. If you see, he has brought about or explained this verse, translated this verse in the translation, not in the word-to-word translation, but in the actual translation of the entire verse. He has brought about the concept of devotional service as a means of achieving remembrance. If you see, regularly engaged yoginaha, these words, regularly engaged, nitya yuktasya yoginaha. These words, if you were to see the translations or the word-to-word translation or the translations of maybe any other sampradaya or somebody who's not a pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada, we sometimes, because we're not always comparing with other books, right, we don't get to appreciate exactly how wonderful this translation is. But just a moment of reflection, yuktaha, yukta, nitya yuktasya yoginaha, just these three words. Full yuktasya, the word yukta has been often translated by Prabhupada as full in, completely engaged in, engaged. These are the words, these are the meanings that Prabhupada has translated, correct? Engaged, fully engaged, completely engaged, yukta. Nitya is regularly, constantly, always. So the word nitya has been translated like that. And yogi, that is a devotee or a person. But here, if you see in the actual translation, constant engagement in devotional service. And this aspect Prabhupada explains in the lecture on this verse. There is a lecture that he took in New York. He gave a lecture in New York covering this verse and the next verse, one lecture. And then that he brings out very, very important aspect, that one's remembrance or one's thinking is dependent upon what one does. If I am, let us say I'm engaged in some work in office, then naturally my thinking is about that work. If I am engaged in the act of collecting wealth or material resources for sustenance of myself or my family members, if I am engaged in maybe providing security for the nation, for my society, for my street, then naturally thinking, remembrance goes in that direction. So if one works for Krishna, then naturally the remembrance and thinking goes for Krishna. So this is Srila Prabhupada's formula that he has given us, that he understands that we are incapable or very, very weak, hridaya daurbalyam, very weak in the aspect of remembering Krishna throughout the day. Therefore, he has given us a simplified process where we only chant 2 hours in a day. But the remaining time, we have to be engaged in devotional service. Because previously, when at the time of when Srila Prabhupada was a disciple, initially he met Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and then he started learning from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. At that time, in the institution that was established by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, which is the Gaudiya Math, actually the disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had to chant 8 hours in a day, 64 rounds. But Srila Prabhupada has given this discount process with the understanding that, or with the expectation that the remaining time should be spent in devotional service. And that is what makes us qualified to follow the path which is given by Prabhupada. So if we fail in this constant engagement in devotional service, if we do not take up to this devotional service, practical devotional service for the remaining time, then the remembrance will not happen. So the most important part of understanding this verse is that ananya cheta satatam yomam smarati nityasaha tasyaham sulabham partha nitya yuktasya yoginaha. So in the translation itself, I would just highlight this part of constant engagement in devotional service, nitya yuktasya yoginaha, which is how you retain the yomam smarati nityasaha. So this is the brief understanding of this verse. Let us just go forward. This purport is actually so wonderful, and there are so many points that it's just not possible to cover in one class. But let me just give you first a very brief overview of where we are in just 2-3 minutes, and then we will go to the purport. This chapter, so far, we have seen up to verse 13. And because we study these verses, 2 verses per week, and that too sometimes there are festivals, we are not able to study the verse. We are not able to remember where we are. We are not able to place where in the 8th chapter we are. So this is just a bird's eye view of the 8th chapter. The first 4 verses, 1 to 4, are Krishna's answers to Arjuna's questions. So in the previous chapter, 7th chapter at the end, Arjuna is asking some questions. He asks particularly, how many questions he asks? 8 questions. There are 8 questions, and these questions are answered in the verses 1 to 4. And then the verses 5 to 8, these 4 verses, Krishna is talking about remembering Krishna at the time of death. So whoever remembers, whatever form, yam yam vapi sparam bhavam, whatever one remembers, frame of mind one is at the time of death, the same form one gets after death. But one who remembers Krishna at the time of death will go back to Krishna. So then the verses 9 to 13, he's talking about Lord Krishna is talking about remembering Krishna through meditation, through different yoga processes. So by meditating on Krishna and his qualities, or by practicing yoga mishra bhakti, that is bhakti which is mixed with other forms of yoga, one can think of Supreme Personality of Godhead when quitting the body and reach the spiritual planets. So this is possible. Now in the 14th, 15th and 16th verses, Krishna is now talking about pure devotional service, remembrance of Krishna through bhakti. And so today's verse particularly is constant engagement in devotional service. One who remembers, undeviatingly remembers Krishna, easily attains Lord's abode. So now let us look at 3 points in the purport, because that is our limited capacity to understand, explain, and also grasp. So these 3 points that I would like to talk about today are, the first one is fundamentals of pure bhakti. In the beginning part of the purport, Prabhupada is explaining what is the essence of pure bhakti. And then there is also just one line that Prabhupada says where Krishna is recommending pure bhakti. But that one line is extremely powerful. There are some other supporting lines also in the purport. And let us just understand that a little bit more by references to some other verses in other scriptures. So Krishna is recommending pure bhakti. And in today's verse, Krishna is recommending pure bhakti as the best means, as the best of all forms of yoga. And the third point is that Krishna is conquered by pure bhakti. So Krishna is easy to attain, right? He's saying that I can be attained. So Krishna is conquered. He is available. Otherwise, he's not available easily. So let us see what that means, and let us understand that a little bit more. So first is fundamentals of pure bhakti. So let us look at that. So let us look at the differences between yoga mishra bhakti and pure bhakti. So when we want to understand something, sometimes it's easy to see in contrast with other things what it is not. So in the previous verses we have been talking about, Krishna has been explaining yoga mishra bhakti, that he has explained how one can remember Krishna through karma yoga, jnana yoga, or hatha yoga. So whereas in today's verse he's talking about bhakti yoga. So bhakti yoga means pure bhakti. That is the meaning of bhakti yoga. It means shuddha bhakti or pure bhakti. Whereas karma yoga, jnana yoga, and hatha yoga are considered to be yoga mishra bhakti. They are not pure bhakti. They have got some material contamination. It is not pure bhakti. So the first thing to understand is that by definition, by the very name bhakti yoga, that itself means pure bhakti. That is the definition of that. Whereas the very definition of karma yoga, jnana yoga, and hatha yoga, yoga means union or linking with the supreme, linking with the divine. So they are all linking process, no doubt. It is a process to attain perfection. But the process of karma yoga, the process of jnana yoga and hatha yoga, they have some material contamination. So what is that material contamination? Those who are practicing karma yoga, jnana yoga, or hatha yoga, they either desire fruitive results such as elevation to heavenly planets, or they desire liberation from material entanglement. or they desire mystic opulences or siddhis. So those who are practicing karma yoga, it is said that they have a desire to elevate themselves to heavenly planets. And then those who are practicing jnana yoga, they want liberation from material entanglement. So they are so tired of the material entanglement that there is no other consideration for them. It is a selfish motive, because they have suffered so much for millions and millions of lifetime. They can understand that material entanglement is the root of their problem, and they simply want to get out of it. And in the process, they also believe or consider that the root cause of material entanglement is the false identification with the body. And this identity is something that they want to let go of. And therefore they want to merge into Supreme Brahman, and thus completely dissolve their identity. So they consider that the highest goal of life is to simply be liberated from material entanglement and merge into the oneness of Supreme Brahman. And by doing so, they get rid of their identity. They want to become God, they want to become Krishna. This is their desire. Those who are practicing the Hatha Yoga process, Ashtanga Yoga process, they have a desire of siddhis, mystic opulences. We have seen in Bhagavatam how there are several yogis who have performed meditation for thousands of years, and they have attained different kinds of siddhis, such as Mahima, Lagima, Anima, or being able to control somebody else's mind, like that. Being able to move objects simply by willing. So like this, there are various siddhis that are available, and those who are performing this Hatha Yoga process, they have a desire for that. But a bhakta or a bhakti yogi, he does not have any such desire. A pure devotee desires nothing but Krishna. And it is said in the purport that a pure devotee is nishkama. And it is said further, I have not written it here, but nishkama is defined as he has no self-interest. Nishkama is defined as, in the next line, in the very next line in the purport, it says, he has no self-interest, no desire for self-interest. So it is not that he has no desire, but he has desire for Krishna. So he has no desire for himself. There is no desire for self-interest. Pure devotees desire nothing but Krishna. In case of a Yoga Mishra Bhakti, there are rules and regulations. There are circumstances in which they can practice, circumstances in which they cannot practice. There are specific time, place also that plays a role. For example, a Hatha Yogi must go to a secluded place. He must cut himself off from the general population, and he must sit in a particular location, not too high, not too low. So like this, there are rules and regulations that they have to follow. And if you look at a Jnana Yogi, if you see the social orders of Brahmachari and Grahastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyasi, really speaking, a Jnana Yogi must start with Sannyasa. Otherwise, Jnana Yoga cannot be practiced at all. And most of the various institutions that are prevalent today all over the world that claim to process or propagate the process of Jnana Yoga, actually for the general population, they only teach karma kanda, nothing beyond that. Because for general householders, nothing beyond the samskaras or various homas or so those kind of purificatory ceremonies, nothing beyond that is possible. If you are a householder, Jnana Yoga is not even possible. The starting point of Jnana Yoga is from sannyasa. So one is not sannyasi, then of course one can have some training as a brahmachari, but the training gets halted once you're in a household, enter household life, and the training can only resume when you take sannyas. So this is the position of Jnana Yoga. So it cannot be followed all the time. There are specific time, place and circumstances where Jnana Yoga can be followed. If you look at Karma Yoga, that also a Karma Yogi is only some portion of the time they perform some ritualistic ceremony to purify themselves and qualify themselves to attain higher planetary systems. But they do not do it all the time because there is a background mind, and that comes to the next point. But essentially this point is that these different yoga processes, they are only applicable in specific time, place and circumstances. Whereas a pure devotee, a bhakta, is always thinking of Krishna without any consideration for time or place. There are no impediments. Prabhupada says in this purport, there should be no impediments. And there is a wonderful quotation from Sri Advaita Acharya: wherever you are, O Lord, there is Vrindavana. A pure devotee is always remembering Krishna, and by doing so, he creates a Vrindavan atmosphere wherever he is. So for a pure devotee, there is no restriction of time, place, or circumstance. Satatam, so always thinking of Krishna and always rendering devotional service. This is the nature of pure devotee. If you see the Yoga Mishra Bhakti process, there is a subtext or a background of desires of self-interest. I should go to a higher heavenly planets, or I want to be liberated from this material entanglement. It is bothering me too much. I'm disturbed in my mind. I don't want this. I want to get out of it. There is a subtext. There is a background. And then in the case of Hatha Yoga, there is a background that I want to attain this mystic opulences. I want to be powerful yogi, like that. There is a background. So because of these backgrounds, even though in the foreground there may be some linking process that has been prescribed, which somebody may be following, which is no doubt a purifying process, but because the background is already contaminated with these self-interest or contaminated with material contamination, therefore it cannot be considered to be pure devotional service, even though all these processes have some element of devotional service. For a Jnana Yogi to be successful, there is a tinge of devotion that is expected. For a Karma Yogi to be successful, a tinge of devotion needs to be added. For a Hatha Yogi to be successful, a tinge of devotion must be added. But that is not pure devotion. Whereas for a pure devotee, it is not a tinge of devotion, rather it is dipped in devotion. It is completely immersed in devotion, and there is nothing else other than devotion. So the foreground activity of what they are performing for a devotee, for a pure devotee, and the background thought of a prayer or the desire to please the Lord, the interest of the Lord, the mission of the Lord, they are completely in alignment. And therefore, for the pure devotee, there is no dissonance or disturbance in the mind, because there is no difference between what they desire and what they are doing. They are both completely alignment. Let us look at this second point, which is recommendation of the pure bhakti. So Krishna is recommending pure bhakti. What does it mean? Let us see that. Prabhupada says in the purport, the pure devotee only wants to please the Supreme Lord. And so the Lord says that for anyone who is unflinchingly devoted to him, he is easy to attain. So first of all, he is giving a path, and he's saying the word easy to attain. So he's giving a easy path. This is the first point that Krishna is saying. The devotee can render service to any of the transcendental forms of the Lord, and he meets with none of the problems that plague the practitioners of other yogas. So if you consider that somebody may have a specific mood of attraction towards the form of Lord Sri Ramachandra, and he can practice that. He can practice pure devotional service in remembering and rendering devotional service to Lord Ramachandra. Or somebody may be a devotee of Lord Narsinghdeva, and he can do that. Similarly, there are unlimited forms of the Lord, Vishnu Murtis of the Lord, Ramadi Murti Shukala Niyamena Tishtan. So a pure devotee can render loving devotional service to any of these forms of the Lord. And he meets with none of the problems. For example, if you are a Hatha Yogi, there is one process of devotional service in which there are several obstacles, because we have seen in 6th chapter, the mind is very difficult to control. And one has to be, first of all, in a forest location. Where is the forest today? Forests are difficult to even find a forest, first of all. And for a Jnana Yogi, he must take sannyas. So that's a great impediment, because there are so many social forces that are discouraging a person from taking sannyas. Whereas there is no significant social forces that can check you from rendering devotional service to a deity form of the Lord at your home. So there is really no impediment for somebody to take up to devotional service, pure devotional service. Bhakti Yoga is very simple and pure and easy to perform. One can begin simply by chanting Hare Krishna. So this kind of a discounted process is not available in Jnana Yoga or Hatha Yoga. There is no discounted process. There are 8 limbs of Ashtanga Yoga, starting with Yama, Niyama, do's and don'ts. You have to start by do's and don'ts. Starting point itself, you have to get up early in the morning, unless that is a starting point. If you see in our Bhakti Yoga process, how do we say, what do you start? Just chant one round. Just chant one round. Simply come. In fact, even before that, simply come and attend our festival and hear us chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra and sing and dance along with us. This is the starting point, correct? For Bhakti Yoga. What is the starting point for Hatha Yoga? Hatha Yoga starting, if you want to take it seriously, if you want to be successful, as per the prescription given in the scriptures, Hatha Yoga starts with get up at 3:30 in the morning. Stop all sense gratification. Yamas and niyamas, do's and don'ts. Very, very difficult to follow. So those hurdles are difficult to follow. The next step of asanas, etc. are even more difficult. Similarly, in Jnana Yoga process, the beginning itself is they take sannyas. Otherwise, nothing much can be done. Yes, some beginning, Gurukul, join Gurukul as a brahmachari. If at all you want to get training for a sannyas also, first step is to join a Gurukul, because if you go to normal school, Jnana Yoga is gone, completely gone. Whereas in Bhakti Yoga, yes, starting point we don't say you must go to Gurukul. You can go to ordinary school, come and here participate in our kirtan, chant one round, chant 2 rounds, chant 3 rounds. Very easily it progresses. So Bhakti Yoga is very simple and it's pure. Just because it is Bhakti Yoga does not mean it is some sentimental process. Krishna is giving this in Bhagavad Gita. This process in the end results in attainment of Krishna. Therefore, it is a transcendental process. Whereas other processes are not pure. They are mixed with a desire for self-interest. I want this. I want liberated. I am tired of this place. Therefore, they are not pure. Whereas Bhakti Yoga is pure. So Krishna is very merciful to those who engage in his service, and he helps in various ways that devotee who is fully surrendered to him, so he can understand him as he is. And this comes later. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti te. So Krishna is giving buddhi yoga. So even if a person is lacking in some knowledge, when you take up to Bhakti Yoga process, Krishna is augmenting the ability of that person with additional knowledge and whatever means are necessary, dadami buddhi yogam, giving the intelligence by which he can come back to Krishna. So this is a proof that Krishna wants us to take this process. Whereas he is not saying anywhere that if there is a person practicing Jnana Yoga, let us say he is not able to take sannyas or he is finding it difficult, he doesn't say, oh, don't worry, I will come and help you take sannyas. Does he say that anywhere? He doesn't say that anywhere. If somebody is trying to perform Hatha Yoga, asanas, yama, niyama, everything he's doing, but somehow he's not able to control his senses, not able to control his indriyas, is he saying that I'll come and help you with the indriya control? No. Why? Because the person is interested in mystic opulences. He's not interested in Krishna. Krishna is actually eager to help every person. Anyone, tasyaham, in this today's verse. Anyone who's taking to Bhakti Yoga, Krishna is willing to help. But the person who's taking to Hatha Yoga, he doesn't want Krishna's help. He wants mystic yoga, opulence, for himself. So he doesn't want Krishna, and that's why Krishna doesn't give him that. It is not that he's holding anything back. This is not some partiality that Krishna is showing to somebody. Krishna gives that which a person wants. If a Jnana Yogi wants liberation, then Jnana Yogi has to attempt on his own. When a person completely surrenders to Krishna, considering Krishna to be his only maintainer, considering Krishna to be only place of shelter, then Krishna steps forward and says, I will give you everything that is needed for you to come back to me. So this is a greatly discounted process, and it is evidence that Krishna is recommending Bhakti Yoga in the entire Bhagavad Gita. So Prabhupada therefore says this wonderful, powerful sentence, Bhakti Yoga is a system that Gita recommends above all the others. So I'll just read one more time. Bhakti Yoga is a system that the Gita recommends above all the others. So this is a important conclusion that we all need to take away, because often somebody may think that yes, there are different yoga systems that are described and I can pick whatever I want. Yes, of course, yatechasi tatakuru. Krishna does not force you to take anything, but it is not that he does not recommend something. He explains the different systems and also says which is the best. And today's verse he's saying, Tasyaham sulabha partha, which if you see in the 6th chapter, Arjuna says that chanchalam hi mana Krishna pramati balavadridam tasyaham nigraham manye vayur iva sudushkaram. And So he says the yoga system that you have described is very difficult to practice. And the mind is very fickle and difficult to control. It is easier to control the mind, the wind, than it is to control the mind. So does Krishna say that, no, it is actually very easy. You can do it, and that is what I would want you to do. He does not say that. He remains neutral. He says, I am not denying that it is difficult, but by practice, by abhyasa, and by detachment, vairagya, it is possible to progress. It is possible to control the mind. It is not possible. It is possible. And he stops there. Arjuna asks, it is so difficult. Krishna says, yes, but it is possible. But here in the 8th chapter, Krishna is not simply saying that it is possible to remember Krishna through Bhakti Yoga. He is saying, Sulabha Partha. For one who is constantly remembering me, I am easy to attain. So he is giving encouragement. Normally when, let us say that you want to have a child who is a little bit reluctant to maybe chant some verse of Bhagavad Gita in front of a camera. Because right now there is an effort going on to collect Bhagavad Gita chanting from ICVK children. So when we ask some child, sometimes either the child is a little bit reluctant, or more than that, the parents may be a little bit reluctant that, oh, this Sanskrit verses seem so difficult. Maybe my child cannot do it. It will take so much time. We have other commitments. Then what do we say? The ICVK teacher will say that, no, this child is actually very capable of doing, and these verses are very easy to do. You can try it. She will actually be able to perform. This is a way of encouragement. That means we want that person to do that. Correct? It's attainable. It's within reach. So Krishna is saying the same thing here to Arjuna. Tasyaham sulabha partha. Arey, don't become afraid of this process. This is the easiest process. Please take it up and it will happen. So this is the verse where Krishna is recommending Bhakti Yoga. And Prabhupada points out that this Bhakti Yogi practitioner is described in Chaitanya Charitamrita as Nishkami. Now, for a person, if you see, even the other yoga systems, why are they taking up to those yoga systems? Why is a Karma Yogi taking up Karma Yoga? Why is a Jnana Yogi taking up Jnana Yoga? Why is... Actually, it is all for in pursuit of happiness, in pursuit of peace and happiness. This is what they want. They want a little bit longer. They understand that in this material world, in this earth, in this bhuloka, first of all, life is very short, and if little bit of joy comes, immediately pain comes. No, I think it is better to go to some heavenly planet where 10,000 years I can live a little bit more joyfully, where there are many angelic women and wine and everything flows comfortably, where it's all much cheaper. I don't have to pay much money for that. It's all naturally available there. So it's actually for a little longer duration of happiness. Correct? That's what the Karma Yogi wants. They're just a little bit more intelligent than ordinary Karmi, who thinks that just by working hard like a donkey, they can get more money. But a Karma Yogi is a little bit more intelligent, and they say, all right, there are better ways to enjoy this. Let me do it the way it is described in the Karma Kanda sections. That's actually a better way to do it. A Jnani feels that I have suffered so much for millions of lifetimes, birth, death, old age, disease. All of this is coming because of my false identity with the body. Actually, if I get rid of this identity, I think I can be liberated, and I can completely stop this suffering nonsense that's going on, and I can become free from suffering. So when somebody wants to become free from suffering, they want peace. They want peace of mind. That's what they want. And then similarly, a mystic yogi, he believes that, all these people with king and all these kshatriyas, they go conquer various kingdoms, they become powerful. Without doing any of that in the forest itself, I can get that. Why I should work so hard? Why I should kill so many people? Just by sitting in one place and meditating, I can become powerful. So they ultimately want some happiness and some kind of rasa that they get. They want some experience a higher joy than what they're experiencing now. But in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is this wonderful verse. Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Athaiva Shanta Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami Sakali Ashanta. Actually, in other forms of yoga, there is no peace. Sadaiva Ashanta. Bhukti, Mukti, Siddhi, Kami. In this, all the three systems come. Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Hatha Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga. All the three systems are described here. Those who are desirous of succeeding in those yoga systems, Sakali, Ashanta, always peace disturbed there. But who is peaceful? Krishna Bhakta Nishkama. Therefore, Shanta. Ataiva Shanta. So Krishna Bhakta is no desire for himself. He only wants desire of Krishna to be fulfilled. When the gopis were asked to take the dust from the lotus feet of Krishna, from their feet, when the gopis were asked, give me the dust from your feet, Krishna wants to put it on his head so that his headache can go away. The gopis did not hesitate even for a minute. Whereas the brahmanas and other bhukti mukti siddhi kamis, they refused. They said, no, this will give me suffering. I'll have to go to hellish planets. My enjoyment will become disturbed. Krishna's headache is okay, but what about my problem? I am worried more about my problem. So, does it mean that they did not have problems afterwards? No, they all had. Sakali Ashanta only. It is only the gopis who are experiencing the highest form of ecstatic bliss because they were only desiring the satisfaction of Krishna. Because a devotee of Lord Krishna is desireless, he is peaceful. Fruitive workers desire material enjoyment, jnanis desire liberation, and yogis desire material opulence. Therefore, they are all lusty and cannot be peaceful. There is one more wonderful verse which takes this one step forward. These other practitioners of other yoga systems, it is said in Chaitanya Charitamrita that they are always disturbed, Sakali, Ashanta. But one may argue that after all, a practitioner of Jnana Yoga does attain to Brahman realization, or he is able to merge into Brahman also. So in that case, are they not freed from suffering? How can you say that it's Sadeva Ashanta? So actually that explanation is given in the Srimad Bhagavatam verse, in the 10th canto, 2nd chapter, 32nd verse. That if a person is undertaking any activity other than worshipping the lotus feet of the Lord, then for such a person, they cannot remain peaceful. Even if they attain what they consider to be the highest perfection, they will fall down because they are not focused on they are not worshipping the lotus feet of the Lord. Ye anve anye aravindaksha vimuktamaninas. Aravindaksha is lotus-eyed, oh lotus-eyed one. That is, Lord Brahma is addressing the Supreme Lord. And he's saying, "O Lord, all those other people, Tvai Ashtabhavat Avishuddha Buddhaya, their intelligence is contaminated. Avishuddha. Shuddha means pure. Avishuddha is contaminated intelligence. Because with their contaminated intelligence, they pursue Ashtabhavat. Ashtabhavat means it is called 8 different varieties of effort. It means they take up varieties of activities to attain a peaceful existence, an eternal peace. They believe that by undertaking those varieties of activities, they can get eternal peace. They can become liberated from the suffering that they are having. But ahruhya krichena param padam tataha, even though they elevate themselves through these activities to what they consider to be the highest platform, paramapadam. This is not the actual paramapadam. This paramapadam here refers to what they consider to be Paramapadam. Okay? So although they elevate themselves through their own efforts to what they consider to be Paramapadam, however, patanti adho anadhrita yusmad angreha, because they ignore, or they anadhrita means ignoring. They have not taken up, they have discarded. Because they have discarded yusmad, your lotus feet, because they have not taken up the worship of your lotus feet, therefore they fall down. They are not able to sustain. Because in these higher places, there is no resting place. It's not that you go there and you sustain. There's no sustenance. So the soul naturally wants an engagement. And in absence of the engagement, they fall down. Someone may say that aside from devotees who always seek shelter at the lotus feet, Lord's lotus feet, there are those who are not devotees, but who have accepted different processes for attaining salvation. What happens to them? In answer to this question, Lord Brahma and other demigods said, O lotus-eyed Lord, although non-devotees who accept severe austerities and penances to achieve the highest position may think themselves liberated, their intelligence is impure. They fall down from their position of imagined superiority because they have no regard for your lotus feet. So now let us look at the last section. Krishna is conquered by pure bhakti. Prabhupada says in this purport, a pure devotee cannot forget the Supreme Lord for a moment. And similarly, the Supreme Lord cannot forget his pure devotee for a moment. This is the great blessing of Krishna conscious process of chanting the Mahamantra, Hare Krishna. So, this concept that the Supreme Lord cannot forget his pure devotee for a moment is a extraordinary reciprocation of the Lord, that it is possible by pure bhakti to reach a stage where the Supreme Lord is not forgetting you even for a minute. It is one thing to say that, for example, a lot of people say that, I know Bill Clinton. Yeah, everybody knows Bill Clinton. But does Bill Clinton know you? No, he doesn't know me. How he can know me? So everybody knows famous personalities. And particularly in, was it in Ramananda Raya's conversation where somebody asked, who's the most famous person? Lord Krishna is the Supreme Lord. Krishna is the most famous person. He's known everywhere. Everybody knows him. So naturally the Supreme Lord is most famous. Everybody knows him. But can you say that he will always remember you? In any moment he will not forget you? What kind of a person you must be that he must sit up and take notice? Prabhupada often quotes Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura, that he used to say, Prabhupada's spiritual master, he used to say, don't be too eager to see God. Instead, do something so that Krishna will be eager to see you. So you try to say, why Krishna is not appearing in front of me? If he was real, he will come in front of me. Well, he's not your order supplier, that whenever you want, he will come. This is possible. That is the process of pure devotional service or pure bhakti. The process reaches a certain stage where Krishna, the Supreme Lord, cannot forget his pure devotee even for a moment. Panthastu koti shatavatsara sampragamyo vayo rathapi manaso munipungavanam so apyasti yat prapadasimnya vichintya tattve govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. So this getting to the point of Krishna seeing you is such an extraordinary thing that normally Krishna is completely inconceivable. Panthastu koti shatavatsara, for years, millions and millions and millions of years. Different people are trying so many different processes, panthas, and they're progressing on those paths. And the progress may be progressing at the speed of wind, vayor atha api, or it may be progressing at the speed of mind. And who are these people who are trying to do this? Not ordinary people, they are munis. But not ordinary munis, muni pungavanam. Pungava means the most exalted personalities or the most prominent personalities. So among the munis, the most prominent personalities are executing their process of either Ashtanga Yoga or Jnana Yoga, etc. At the speed of mind they are trying to do this meditation. At the speed of wind, at the speed of mind, for millions and millions of years. And still, because they're trying it on their own dint of their own effort, what is happening? So api asti yat prapada simni avichintya tattve. Prapada means toe. Simni means tip of the toe. They are unable to reach beyond the tip of the toe of the Supreme Lord. That means they cannot. Tip of the toe is the starting point of the Supreme Lord, Bhagavan feature. So they cannot even touch, they cannot cross, they cannot understand who the Lord is. The Lord is not available to them. It's a poetic way of saying that they cannot touch anywhere, come anywhere close to the Lord. Govinda Madi Purusham, I bow to that Govinda, I offer my obeisances. I worship Govinda, the primary Lord. Only the tip of the toe of whose lotus feet is approached by the yogis who aspire after transcendental and betake themselves to pranayama by drilling the respiration, or by jnanis who try to find out the non-differentiated Brahman by the process of elimination of the mundane extending over thousands of millions of years. So this purport is a little difficult, sorry, the translation. It is written by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. It's a little difficult. Essentially it is saying that those who are jnanis and yogis, they may try to do various processes, but they cannot come anywhere close to the Supreme Lord. That Supreme Lord, who is not approachable by any of them, who cannot be won over, who cannot be conquered by any of these Munipungavas who are attempting their process for millions and millions of years, becomes conquered. How does he become conquered? Jnane prayasam udapasya namanta yeva jivanti sanmukharitam bhavadiya vartam sthane stita shruti gatam tanuvar manobhir ye prayaso jita jito piyasitai srilokyam. So the Supreme Lord, who is unreachable, unconquerable, untouchable, cannot be approached by the yogis and jnanis who are speculating at the speed of mind, at the speed of wind for millions and millions of years, becomes easily conquered by somebody who simply gives up the effort of speculative knowledge, who surrenders to the Supreme Lord. Jnane prayasam udapasya. In the purport of this verse, Prabhupada says that the word udapasya is a very, very strong Sanskrit word. It means just completely giving up, just abdicating, just not even trying anything. Jnane prayasam, any efforts towards philosophical speculative knowledge, the process of ascending knowledge, the process or the philosophy that I can figure out, I am a philosopher, I have some intelligence, I can figure out what is the truth. So that process, completely giving up. Namantayeva. So, and instead, one should completely offer one's respects and take up to the hearing of the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. Namantayeva is offering respects to the Lord and His message, particularly in the form of Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam. Offering respect means hearing the message. So give up your own speculative process of trying to understand the absolute truth and instead receive the oral reception of the Lord's message from the works like Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita. Jivanti sanmukharitam bhavadiya vartam. And this should be heard from sanmukharitam. Sanmukharitam means from the lips of the Supreme Lord or His pure devotees. So this hearing process of Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, not simply that we take all the Sanskrit shlokas and start hearing, that will not help. Because then you're trying to interpret the Sanskrit and trying to understand what the Lord is saying by your own effort, and that won't help. What is being said here is, Sanmukharitam bhavadiya vartam. Your message should be heard from the lips of a pure devotee. Such a person who, in whatever situation he may be, sthane stita srutigatam tanuvan manobhir, that is unlike the person who's jnana yogi who must become a sannyasi to even start the process, or a hatha yogi who must go to the forest, who must give up his job, and similarly. So instead of all of that, this person who's taking up to this process of hearing simply has to continue in his current social order. If he is working in some office, he can continue to work there. If he is married, he can continue to be married. There is no problem with any of that. But instead, he has to offer his attention to hearing the message of the Supreme Lord from the lips of a pure devotee. Ye prayaso ajita jito api taisrilokyam. So such a person can win over the Lord, who can otherwise not be won over, conquered in any of the three worlds. Those who, even while remaining situated in their established social positions, throw away the process of speculative knowledge and with their body, words and mind offer all respects to the descriptions of your personality and activities, dedicating their lives to these narrations. Jivanti. So here the key word jivanti means dedicating their lives to these narrations. So it's a very important keyword because it means we have to mold our lives. We have to mold our lives so that we have the opportunity to give ourselves a chance to hear the descriptions of the Lord and their activities, Lord and His activities, which are vibrated by you personally and by your pure devotees. Certainly conquer your Lordship, although you are otherwise unconquerable by anyone within these three worlds. So, what we have studied in this Bhagavad Gita verse, chapter 8, text 14, is that in contrast with the process of bhukti, mukti, siddhi, in the contrast to that, the process of bhakti is nishkama. It is without any desire for self-interest. And therefore, that process is ataiva shanta. It gives peace. And later in 9th chapter, Krishna says, sukham kartum avyayam. It is enjoyable. So, this process of pure bhakti is being recommended. Krishna says, Tasyaham sulabha partha, very easily attainable. And in that way, Krishna is encouraging Arjuna and all of us to take up to this process seriously, cast away all our doubts about the efficacy or the importance of this process. This is not a sentimental process. Just because we are singing, we are using harmonium, kartal, mridanga, or a japamala. These are material things, somebody may think. It is not, it is pure, it is transcendental. When it is done without desire for self-interest. Pure bhakti means having interest only for Krishna. So, these are the points from today. I'll stop here and see if you have any questions, comments. So we'll continue on next Saturday to the other verses of the section where the Supreme Lord is talking about the glories of pure devotional service and is recommending that this is the best process. We'll stop here. Granthara Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Jagat Guru Shila Prabhupada ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande.